Ready to go? Okay. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Sanford Public Schools Board of Education meeting on January 4th. I would like to call this meeting to order and have roll call, please.
Dunn,
Here.
Mullen,
Here.
Noble,
Here.
Wyden, here, Williams.
Here. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, opportunity for the public to speak.
I'm sorry, nothing.
Okay. Okay, step contributor. Okay. I'm gonna take a table sheet. Okay, Mrs. Shelley. You are Commissioner Shelley Schumer. Yes, okay. This is for you, ma'am. WEPCO has been one of Sand Springs Public Schools' biggest cheerleaders. And from my note, WEPCO has contributed $140,000 over the last 4 years for STEM programs, K through 12. They're also a partner in our internship program with our, is it juniors and seniors? Just seniors. These are paid internships. And they also recently they branded our engineering program at Charles Page. So, thank you, beyond words, thank you.
I'm happy to accept it.
Can I just say one? Yeah, I have many times, y'all can't shut up.
Here's the thing, from the get-go, with my pleading, Shelley knows this, because I showed up at WEPCO several years in a row saying, please, please help. And proudly, we offer STEM education for K through grade 12, which is fabulous. With a premier curriculum that people just absolutely love, but it's costly. It costs a lot of money to keep people trained, and then also just the curriculum itself. So thank you. The other thing I want to mention is WEPCO is going to be featured with the Tulsa Chamber in their opening meeting in January. I know you all know that our members, Sand Springs Public Schools, are members of the Tulsa Chamber, so they're going to do a highlight video of our STEM Education Center in the engineering department with WEPCO's branding. So I believe I shared a picture with Board of Education a few weeks ago with the mock-up. And I think it was completed today. Is that correct? So I don't know if you want to add anything. You want to share?
We're just happy to be a great partner with a great partner, and I appreciate this, and we look forward to more years, and we want our kids to stay in town after they're done with school, and we think that WEPCO is a great opportunity for those who go to college and for those who don't.
So my favorite part of the branding are the quotes. Do you think you could kind of share about?
The quotes are from two graduates of Charles Page High School who went on to become engineers, and they work for us. One's been working for us for more than 20 years. Another one's worked for us for almost 10. And they both quotes say that, you know, we have the opportunity to do great things in our own community.
Fabulous. Thank you, WEPCO.
That's when you try to make the kids happy, you know, your eyes squint, and you're around smiling, and we know that we're all just making good happen.
I'm trying to keep this, Madam President.
Yeah,
So, the other thing that is, oh, yes, Shelley, here's your box, Shelley. We do in the month of January, Shelley would love to stay for the rest of the meeting, but she's committed
I have to go work concessions next door.
volunteering for, I think a concession or something like that. January is Board Appreciation Month, so I'm going to sabotage the meeting, of course, and recognize our 5 board members this year that truly work tirelessly through the year supporting our students, our teachers, our staff, even me occasionally. I'm teasing, they support me all the time, but they do a great job, and it is pretty thankless We've had quite a year, as you all are well aware, with the pandemic, and I've told them a few times, probably, this is probably the most stressful year we've had professionally, and we've handled it with, I think, a lot of professionalism and maturity. So without these folks to support what we're doing with the work with our kids, we wouldn't be the district that we are. So I'm proud to recognize, first of all, Ms. Whitney Wagers for president. I'm gonna let you stand up there, Whitney, and just like totally bore you guys with a picture if you don't mind. Ms. Jackie Wagner, board member. You can come up here, Jackie, and let everybody recognize you. Mr. Mike Mullins. Mike, I hate to do this to you, but how long have you been on the board? 24 years standing board member of Sand Springs Public Schools, and I have to say, his wisdom and knowledge on Lee Settle is amazing, as are the rest of you guys. Bo Noggle, Mr. Bo Noggle, amazing. Dedicated, I love the color orange, it's awesome. Fabulous, and then last but certainly not least, Mr. Rusty Gunn. So if you guys could just stand together and let us get a picture of this fabulous 5 people of you.
Want to remember with all your masks on.
And it's gonna be a history, I promise you. So thank you for your service and thank you for supporting us. Your students.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 6, discussion and review of instructional strategies and alignment with district continuous strategic improvement and goals, student empowerment and staff empowerment.
You guys have some, attachments that are part of the meeting. I'm gonna start out with our special ed data. This is something that we received each year. I asked Ms. Layhuber, who of course is our special ed director, to take us through the report. You all know that I functioned as a special ed director, and this is not atypical in terms of what we receive each year regarding just a review of our data. So Carrie, if you don't mind, I know you have a loud voice, but you want to use the mic.
I don't think I'll need
Are
it.
you sure?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Tina, how do I get your Chromebook to come on? You gotta do a dance, hold your tongue just right.
Okay.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, we just need to adjust.
Oh,
There we go, thank you. So, you all have, let me actually go back to this. Each of the board members should have this, a copy of the actual district data profile that we were given from the State Department. So you can refer back to this. I didn't add this into the slideshow since you guys already have it, but I want to talk about a couple of areas where we need a little bit of targeted assistance, and then talk about a couple of areas that I think that we're doing some really awesome things in Sand Springs. So the state, we do an end of year data information that we pass on to the State Department in the summer. And then based on that information, they pull several different special education determinations, and then based on that, they give us a needs assessment. So the tiers are tier 1 through 4, 1 being nothing really needs to be worked on, and then 4 is grave concern. So we were in tier 2, just barely. We were almost in tier 1, and so obviously that is our goal, is to be in tier 1. The risk for us not meeting the needs for special education students, as you can see, is very low. And then the support that we're going to do through some monitoring that the State Department will do for us is level 2 support. This is actually the same place where we were last year, but we're targeting a couple of different things this year. So when you have to do level 2 support, there are 3 things you have to do. Some technical assistance with the State Department, which I completed in November. a self-assessment where you gather a team together of special education staff and really pour through the data and figure out exactly what it is that we need to target. And we did that on December 11th. And then based on the results of the self-assessment, you come up with professional development modules that you want to complete. And so based on what we did in in December, we've got those scheduled to do in February, possibly some in March as well, just because we don't want to pull people out all at the same time. So we may rotate those through for staff. There were 2 indicators that we were asked to monitor. One was indicator 7, which is early childhood outcomes. So when a student comes into our program in pre-K, and pre-K is considered ages 3 through 5, they do what is called an early childhood entry. And the evaluator, who is the special ed teacher or possibly the school psych or the speech pathologist, grades and rates a student on those 3 bullet points: social emotional, acquisition and use of skills and knowledge, and use of appropriate behavior. And then when the student turns 6, what the state is looking for is that there has been substantial growth there from the entry data to the exit data. We did a great job when you're looking at the district data profile for students who actually met the goals so highly that perhaps they went off of an IEP, but we had a little bit of room for improvement for students who continued on an IEP. And so I'll talk to you in just a second about the way that we're going to plan on remediating that. And then the other indicator is indicator 11, which is child find. That is how our district goes about determining students that have a disability. And so 100% compliance is expected here. When a parent signs consent for evaluation, we have 45 school days to complete that. There's really not wiggle room there. I will tell you, we had a little bit of issue this last year, and the state recognizes that, but they did still have to mark us down because we did have students that say if consent was signed the week or 2 before we moved to full distance learning, we were not able to complete those evaluations in a timely manner. So the state understands and recognizes that we weren't able to do that, but they still have to show because of federal law that they were not met. So I'm not really super terribly concerned about this one because I know that was part of the pandemic, but there is still some room for improvement. So we'll talk about that as well. The self-assessment team included myself, the 3 school sites, Morgan Douglas, our administrator at the Early Childhood Center, and then the speech pathologist and the special ed teachers at the Early Childhood Center and elementary sites, and then our occupational therapy assistant and our physical therapy assistant. And the reason that I targeted this group to be on the self-assessment team is because both of those indicators are very tied together with early childhood. And so it made the most sense to have those people be part of the self-assessment team because they were going to know the most about what we were doing well and what we needed to work on. So, as far as the findings went, it was a really productive meeting. I have to say that's one silver lining I feel like of these Zoom meetings that we're having is people can stay in their building at the end of the day and finish up, and we're not wasting drive time getting to and from places. And so it ended up being a really productive meeting. And we came up with 3 things that we're going to do to make these areas better for Sand Springs students. The first one is that we're going to create a district-wide rubric and flow chart for those entry and exit data points. Because, for example, if I'm a 3-year-old and I start at ECEC, then the speech path of the teacher at ECEC is the one who's going to do the entry numbers, but then the teacher at the elementary side is going to do the exit numbers. So if it's arbitrary and I feel like you look like a 3 at entry, but the next teacher thinks, well, maybe they're only a 4 at exit, if we have that uniform where it's a rubric and they can look at it, that's going to make that work out a little bit better. Also, we're going to provide a reminder through EdPlan, which is the program that we use for special education paperwork, to our early childhood and our elementary special ed staff to remind them about due dates, because sometimes we were graded down because no scores were given. So the teachers mentioned that sometimes they just forget that they're supposed to do that, and so we're gonna make sure that that is taken care of, so that that's not a reason that we're graded down. And then the third thing has more to do with the child find part, and we're gonna have a quick guide right now. Our sped teachers and staff have a quick guide for all sorts of different procedures, but we are gonna add one for how to complete eligibility in a timely manner, who's on the team, who needs to be in the loop, so that the ball isn't ever dropped there as far as getting students evaluated and identified. Because obviously, we know that these early years are the most important years to get them taken care of for their services. And since I have the floor, I have to do a little bit of a brag on my people. In years past, if you, reference your, district data profile in years past, indicator 3B and C, we had, had some areas of concern there, which was really about participation and performance on statewide assessment for students with disabilities. But right now, we are really, approaching the target. And I do want to note that this is based on 2018 data, so I really think when we start to look at 2019, 2020, and the next couple of years, we are going to meet and exceed that target, not just approach it. And there are two really big things that we've done at the secondary level to make that happen. The biggest one is the co-teaching initiative. And what we realized a few years ago is sometimes we were over-serving special ed students with the best possible intention, and it was because we wanted to give them every service that we could provide for them. But we were realizing that if we would put a special ed teacher in the classroom with a general ed teacher, we could provide them those same intensive services, and they're not pulled out just in a direct instruction special ed class. Because what we find is the longer that they're separated, the bigger that gap gets between them and their same age peers. So I wanted to shout out to Ms. Ogle and Ashley Wise and the staff at Clyde Boyd, because they really took that and ran with it. They have 16 sections at Clyde Boyd right now for co-taught reading, math, and speech, which means that classrooms have a special ed and a general ed teacher in there together, and you can put special ed students in there with their general ed peers, and they're being exposed to grade level curriculum as opposed to a lower level curriculum. Obviously, this is the kind of initiative that has to roll upwards, because I can't tell a senior in high school that's been in special ed classes his whole life, oh, well, you're going to be integral in Algebra 2 this year, but you've never had any exposure to that. So it's rolling up instead of rolling down. And so we started it at the 9th grade last year. They now have 6 sections of co-taught English and math. And then we added 10th and 11th grade English and math this year. And then next year we'll be fully integrated and also have 12th grade in that as well. So I'm super excited about that. It's really great for our kids. A lot of our students were coming to me as seniors and saying, I really want to try TCC. And I didn't know that we had prepared them for that, because they had not been exposed to the grade level curriculum. So this is a really exciting initiative, and the teachers are all in. Educators aren't used to teaching with another adult in their classroom, especially general ed teachers. Special ed, we're kind of used to somebody else being around. So it is, there's some vulnerability there, and they really do have to be willing to actually co-teach, because we don't want to use the special ed teacher as a glorified class monitor. So it's been really exciting to watch that. And then one other thing for that, the EDGE grant is a program that Mr. Trout and the staff at the high school applied for. I think Mr. Durkee said that he has mentioned that before at a meeting.
Right, so one of anytime we do testing and there's some area of needs that the state determines, then in format, which is interesting, we sometimes get granted extra funds, which is what this is about. And so this is one that Mr. Trout applied for and actually secured, that allowed him to hire the instructional coach. So Amy Sanders is in the building this year for a year only. I mean, it's grant funded, and so kind of see where that goes. But I think for now it's working very well.
It is, and we were really able to take a look at students that we felt really had the opportunity to increase those ACT scores, and so we targeted a group of special ed and general ed students, and 2 special ed teachers took that on. Angela Fitzgerald and Scott Watkins. They are teaching 3 sections of really intensive reading instruction, and I think that it's going to make a huge difference for our students. So That's just a little breakdown. Do you guys have any questions about the district data profile? So riveting.
It is riveting, especially for those of us that really love that program.
I think it sounds awesome.
It's amazing. Yeah, it is. Thanks, Carrie, I appreciate that. So to take you in further to, the agenda for curriculum instruction, also attached is our CTE, review. And if you took the time to flip through that one, you did notice that everything was, coded all standards met, which is what you want to see for that program. So that's one that Mr. Beard handed off to Ryan Biven when Mr. Biven was transferred to Charles Page High School for assistant principal, and he's done a great job with that one. Draft calendar, you guys, is attached under item number 23. I wanted to do a little bit of explanation. Of course, when we get to that item, if you have a question about it or you want to ask there, it looks pretty much the same as our previous calendars have, with the exception of the 2 days at the beginning of the school year that the teachers had asked to continue. So if you recall, we shifted the calendar this year to account for the enrollment rush that happened with our virtual academy. And so when we shifted that, we had two, what I'm going to call holidays, although they're really not holidays. They really were just days that weren't instruction, nor were they working days for teachers. But it ended up being a huge hit. Teachers loved them. So we incorporated that into this year's draft calendar as well. So just know that's the reason. The other thing I would say is I don't believe, have complete information about when fall break, Ms. Arnold, will be for all the schools in the state. So the only possible change prior to March on that calendar could be a shift in fall break to the following week. I don't think so. I think we calculated right, that could be one change that you could see, I believe, in February or March. So any questions about the calendar? Now is probably a good time to ask those questions. Okay, moving on. Oklahoma, we had the announcement a few weeks ago that we will not be issued a district report card this year for fiscal year 21. That's good news. Really for all of us, since we know how much the learning's been disrupted. I will have to administer those tests, but as far as taking those tests into accountability to issue a report card for districts, that will not happen in the state of Oklahoma. So I think all of us are finding much relief in that. And then Sean just approached me and said, I can't believe you put this EdTech magazine interview in the board agenda, but obviously it's good for you guys to hear some of the things that our staff's doing. So he's shaking his head no, that we've got some really great people that do really great work, and it's getting notoriety. So I'm really proud of Mr. Beard for that. And then the other thing that I didn't put on here, probably should have, you guys have met Sean King repeatedly, I think, at board agendas, but he was selected for the second year in a row to serve on Superintendent Hoffmeister's Student Advisory Committee at the state level. So super proud of Sean. So we'll probably be recognizing him yet again for board recognition for the end of the year. And proud to say, and he probably would love for me to say this in front of him, which I will do later, he is headed to Columbia University in New York City. So I'm very proud of Sean's accomplishments. So great news, great stuff to report, honestly. We've been so hyper-focused, and it seems this kind of black cloud has been following us around since the pandemic, but we are determined to make sure we're getting the great news out there that's happening within the district. So super proud of what we're doing with student empowerment and teacher empowerment. So I guess for questions. All right. Are you, Madam President? Okay. So the next discussion is really about facilities and finance update. I try really hard to supply you with a lot of information. We get flooded with information from COSA, from OSSBA, and of course my favorite, Vern Florence, who continues to supply the newsletter. You guys, I'm sure, keeping track of state revenue as it's unfolding. The Board of Equalization met in December, and of course won't certify how much the legislature is set to appropriate until their February meeting. So I think if you talk to Pam Deering at our COSA organization, she would tell you to proceed with caution as well as Vernon Florence did. However, I will say it looks a little bit less bleak than what we were suspecting. We're set to receive right at 3.1-ish million in COVID relief funding. I have no idea when that will come. We're waiting for more information, and at that point, we'll budget, going forward. But hopefully, that's a bit of pleasant news versus kind of that gloom and doom that we've been expecting for the past year. So again, a lot to be determined, but that feels better to report that versus, oh my gosh, we're in for, a crisis. We don't think there's gonna be a revenue shortage this year, which is super helpful, honestly. Let's see, Panda, I think I covered most of it for finance. I do want to talk about, bond projects. I actually handed you guys, mostly because I just got it finished, before we came, but just a bond completion, list of things that we've done since the bond passage in 2019. So if you remember, the vote was March of last year, actually 19, so 2 years ago, I guess. But we're just approaching almost 2 years since the bond was passed. And we took the time to visit the list today of things that had been completed or were in progress today, and it's pretty amazing what's been completed already. So the list reads Turf at Memorial Stadium, Clyde Boyd Middle School window louver replacement, Limestone Technology Academy Electric, Pratt Water in the Teachers Lounge is complete, Ed Newby Fieldhouse Sound is complete, auditorium at CPHS and Clyde Boyd Middle School in terms of sound is complete, plus the much needed improvements to the drama area. Freshman Academy and STEM Center is now complete. The drama storage and stagecraft room at Charles Page High School is complete. Baseball, softball regrade is in progress, and Angus Valley Gym / storm shelter is also in progress, and there is concrete. So it's pretty exciting to see the kind of progress that has made in really very little time. So I know our district is proud of that. It's something I think that we can probably show to the community that their bond dollars do work, they are working, and so that's exciting. A little bit more on the baseball field, which has become a huge thorn on my side, honestly. They did a little bit of work, and Jeannie's here. I wanted to have her here to describe the trial of trying to get the drainage to do what it's supposed to do, which has been a real challenge. The issue is a good word for it. We're sitting on a bed of limestone, which makes it really tricky to get the grading correct. We knew that was a problem going into it. I know I've expressed to you how this is, I call it a thorn on my side, that since the beginning of my superintendency, this has been something that's been brought to my attention multiple times. And so, Jeannie, if you don't mind kind of explaining where we're at.
They've had a good drainage system this summer. I was out there several times this summer while they were doing this. And then they handed it off to the sprinkler guy and the side guy, somewhere between the overall drainage, and after the sprinklers came in, before the sod went down, they didn't check the grades, and there's a pump that doesn't allow it to drain properly, and it's holding water around home plate. So we gave them a chance to come in and fix it over Christmas break, and they didn't tell me that they were there yet. I kept waiting for them to call. They were done by the time I knew they were even out there, and they expected me to go give them the blessing after Christmas. So Sherry and I met over there around before New Year's.
New Year's Day,
Right,
yeah.
And I could see they hadn't had it fixed yet. So they've been, I've talked to them, they're aware of it, they're really good about fixing it, and they will, have every intention of helping out.
In the meantime, I think I have told you guys in an email, we talked through the possibility, because the field's never drained very well. Anyway, softball has been the same. It's just problematic in that area. We talked about turfing home plate and the pitcher's mound to account for at least being able to play baseball if it has rained. Because what happens is, as you all know, home plate and pitcher's mound are dirt. And so at least it'll give them an opportunity to play. So today we met with Jeannie, Rod, Coach Brown, and we're gonna approve the installation of turf on home plate and the pitcher's mound. Matt was sent back to baseball this afternoon to call United, I believe is the name of the company that submitted the bid, to see what the timing would be, and he was able to get confirmation that they're getting the turf ordered to do that project. We're gonna demand that they come back out. It's probably a little bit of a problem prior to, right. I mean, they're gonna fix it too, but in the meantime, I think just solving the problem of having that field ready and prepared to play.
Well, one thing the turf does is allows the home plate and pitcher's mound to stay dry all the time, and if we might have gone a different route, if we'd known that was their goal to do that. So, now that we know that it takes so long for that, and it always has.
I do want to field any questions that you guys might have about that. That has been a sore spot for some time for us, I think, just as a unit trying to get that corrected. So any questions?
Well, then, the turf on baseball and football team?
Just in the infield of baseball. Trying to reroute the drainage, that's been a huge problem. We've had a problem with the field being ready after a rain for years. I mean, this goes back to when my son was in high school back in, he graduated in 2009. And so it's always been very problematic, and I'll never forget my first year, Billy Hudson walked to my office and said, this is a problem. And if you'll recall, the reason for even making this a project is because home plate was actually higher than the pitcher. It posed a safety problem. And we talked about that for several years, but it's been conducive to poor drainage, mostly because of the limestone. The limestone's not super low. I mean, it's really right under the dirt. So it's been a real trick to try to figure that out. So I worried a little bit about how you can have turf that's right next to grass. Matt did his homework, and there's fields in a lot of areas that do just exactly that. So it's very safe. They've done it in several other places. And so I really feel like for the purpose of getting the problem solved, that needs to happen. And then they'll come back out and fix the swell that they kind of created around the first base side.
And on baseball, we're still holding a little bit of water between second base and third base. I went out there right after the rain, we have 2.5 inches of rain. And then I went out there the next day when it froze, and the water had gone down, but there was one little area that froze. I knew about that. They were going back and trying to rework that when they put the conditioner on. I think they need to do a little bit more. When that field was done several years ago, it was designed to actually drain from the outfield on first base all the way across to third base outfield. So we stopped that water running off the road and running across the field several years ago, but we've had to lift the pitcher's mound up. It was in a hole and it was holding water, so we lifted that up. We fixed everything else. There's still one low spot there, and we didn't want to get out into the grass. So we were trying to fix everything in that dirt area. They'll come out in 1 week.
I will say the company's been really good about coming back and trying to make it happy. So, and we complain. I've done my fair share of complaining. You know that I have the ability to do that. Rusty's raising an eyebrow because I know this.
This group that is going to put the artificial stuff down, done that before?
Yes.
Or is this their first time?
No, they've done that
This
before.
county has done it before.
Absolutely.
They do a lot of turf.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
They do a lot of turf, and actually we asked them to bid on this job, and that was who I talked to probably 3 years ago, and I thought was gonna get this job, and they backed out doing the dirt work. And I don't know if it was just a sourcing problem for them, or I don't know why they came to the bid, to the pre-bid meeting, and, but they decided they were too busy or something, that they.
But they have put artificial turf around the home plate and pitcher's mound
Correct.
somewhere in the vicinity.
And where did you say?
Oh, you're asking where, there were several of them.
Yeah, there were several.
In the state. I asked that very question to make me a little nervous too. I was worried about just where the turf meets the grass, and it has happened in several other counties. Actually, I wish Matt was here to tell you. He actually went in and looked.
Coach is okay.
Oh, yeah.
Coach is okay.
Oh, yeah. So questions about that? I know that's been a tricky project. Most of the time, things go fairly smooth, I think. This one has just been one thing after another, so.
One other thing I want to tell you, I just got an email, they were gonna start on the curtains at the high school.
Oh, nice.
Tomorrow.
Okay. We waited, that was the last of the drama remodel, just because with a lot of construction, we want the curtains to get, dust in them. A couple of things that we're talking through that we really haven't settled in, but we've had a lot of discussion involved, and this is not a bond issue, this is just some projects that we know need to happen. We're talking through the possibility of track storage building with some bathrooms at the track, that's been needing to happen for a while. Haven't settled on anything, but I just wanted to kind of share with you and put the feet in your head, know we're talking about it, and then, the enrollment center shift to the front of the, really kind of thinking through the old ninth grade facility, because right now we have two major programs there. One is cheer, one is dance, that require a big space, and there really is just no other place right now to put them. So again, talking through it, we haven't landed anywhere, but one of my pet peeves is the enrollment center that sits on the hill that is hideous for people to come and see right from the get-go. So it's something that we definitely need to work on. So those are kind of the hopper. We haven't settled, but when we get some, clean plans that we feel like will be a good strategy, then I'll be sharing that with the board as well. Any questions facility-wise? And then lastly, just, kudos to Sherry Pearson. I love our people for a lot of reasons, but one of the things that they are very careful about is expenditure and always looking for alternative sources for funding. And so she's applied for grants for all the school sites, and we got notice that Clyde Boyd Middle School will receive $1,500 for not food, but for supplies and equipment. So kudos to Ms. Pearson. I think that concludes, unless you guys have questions.
Number 8, empower families and communities.
So, obviously, dialogue will continue. I will tell you, I prefer doing dialogue in person before board meetings, but I will say this, we would meet every month on Mondays at 5:30, and we would have maybe a handful of people show up. Now that we're putting on our dialogue, we'll get 80 to 100 views, which I think is a good thing. So we've increased the views on those for sure. And so trying to keep our community informed of what's going on. A lot of those have been about, obviously, COVID this year, which is what sparked it. If this is one thing,
Can you tell where those 80 people are from?
you can't.
They're not
No.
It's anonymous. It just tells you how many people are watching it at any given time, and it typically fluctuates, like you said, anywhere from, I would say, about 65 to the hot button issues like the start of school plan. We had almost 150 watching at any given time. And something else that's been nice is, since those are now recorded and on our YouTube channel, parents that maybe couldn't tune in at that time, they were working, a kid was sick, whatever the reason may be, we get follow-up questions over the next couple days after we do one of those, as parents are able to go back and watch those videos and get those answers and then ask those follow-up questions when they have time.
I love it. Ms. Moses has been very intimately involved in making sure we go online, as has Mr. Beard for sure, but just being there on Tuesday nights, it's, something to ask your staff to show up on a Tuesday night if they do it. This summer, we were doing those every week. We can do them more often, but they were just committed to making sure those happen. So the interesting part is we just kind of put ourselves out there. There's a Google form for questions, and so people can literally live write a question, and you really never know what you're going to get. So we just do it. Sean, I'll never forget, one at the very beginning, he said, "Do you want me to flash this one up?" And I said, "Absolutely, put it up there." And so we just did and tried to answer it as clearly as we could. So I feel like that's worked really well. The other thing that our teaching and learning office has initiated is the new landing spot for the parent portal. And that was an idea that was really cultivated out of the pandemic page that pops up as a window when you log onto the website. So when you log on, you have to see that pop up and then click outside of it to get off of it. So out of that idea, Sean has started putting together a parent landing page, if you will, so that parents easily can find information versus digging inside the website to try to figure it out. So you got a taste of it. There was a link that you could look at to see, and it's not, is it live, Sean?
It's not quite live yet, and some of that is also something that we're hoping to kind of check a box with federal compliance as well, because since we do receive title funds from the federal government, there's a family communication piece that we are required to provide. But seeing the response of people using the Strategies for Startup page, we decided to kind of take both of those pieces and put them together, and just rather than make it so that parents have to hunt for things on the website, this would just be a one-stop shop where they can just click on a family resource link, and it would open up the page, and it would have a lot of the things that they would normally look for at their fingertips. So it's not quite live yet. We're still working on it.
Right, just a kind of taste to see what that would look like. So I'm very proud of that. I think that concludes Empowering Families and Communities. If you're good to move on, and I promise I'll hand the
Oh,
microphone back.
yeah, number 9, health and
Okay, number 9, health and safety. So just attach the meeting agenda for December for our Healthy and Safe Schools meeting. Of course, JJ Smith continues to chair that one. As you probably are following, teachers have been moved into tier 2 for COVID vaccines. I sent out an all staff email from the Tulsa Health Department. So as soon as I get that information, we're going to be shipping it out to people. From what I understand, they're setting up pods so that people can make appointments to go get their vaccine. And I'm hoping that happens sooner than later. I'm getting lots of questions about when. Hopefully that rolls out sooner than later. And then as far as COVID data, we struggled with putting that out there Monday, and I'll tell you why. We were in restart mode. And so had we published today COVID data, you would have seen 0 and 7. I mean, it would have been super low, which wasn't, in my opinion, an adequate reflection of what's being reported today. So we're going to resume that data reporting on the website next Monday, the 11th. So because now that school's back in session, we're getting some reports of where we were at. So essentially, we had 0 quarantines, obviously, and I just didn't seem necessary maybe to put that back up. So what we did is we put a Facebook post out and just said, we'll restart the data reporting as of Monday, January 11th. Any questions about health and safety? Okay, consent agenda. Okay, so consent agenda, there's just a couple of things. And Carrie, I'm going to ask you to explain a little bit on 21 and 22. Mostly 22, because this is an item that will allow us to restart our Medicaid billing. And if you remember, a while back, when I was still serving as special ed director, we were actually doing that. See you later, Mike. So if you don't mind, kind of explaining a little bit about that.
Let me go through 21 really quickly. You all approved the contract with Robert Miller. He is an assistive technology specialist that works with students with visual impairments. He thought he would be able to complete that contract by December, but it took us a little longer to get some of the equipment in because laptops aren't coming really quickly. So we're the only thing that we're changing about the contract is that it's extended through the end of the school year. He has been able to see the students that he is contracted to see twice, and he still has 4 more times to see them. So the amount of money isn't changing, nothing is changing except for the date there. On 22, the State Department, as the circuit said, we used to bill Medicaid in the past. We stopped that because it was becoming a very tedious and very cumbersome process that very often resulted in, you owe this much money back to the Oklahoma State Healthcare Authority. And so we stopped doing that. That was apparently happening statewide. So Oklahoma Healthcare Authority and the State Department of Education now are contracting together. And essentially, I would say the 4 or 5 things that were the most cumbersome, they have worked through all of those things. So for example, I would have to get a prescription from a doctor for a student to get reimbursed for Medicaid billing to be seen by our speech path. Well, now they're recognizing that that speech path is in the healing profession and their IEP is able to be the plan of care for that student. It's also, the PCG Education, which is here, Public Consulting Group Incorporated. That is the group that we write, that has our, IEP writing software. So that is already a statewide program that is used, and our teachers and our staff are really familiar with that program. That's where we will also track it. In the past, when my paraprofessionals were billing from my classroom, they literally had to get a notebook out and they had to handwrite to this notebook, and then I had to transcribe it somewhere else. They've really shored up this process to make it very user-friendly for us, and so I feel really confident from the conversations I've had with the State Department that this could be a really great thing for our district and generate money to the point that we're talking about being able to possibly hire staff to help us in the special education department with the revenue that we receive from it. It would not roll out until the fall. So this allows us to have a contract with them so that we can start the process of getting our staff trained.
This isn't the first rodeo we had with Medicaid billing. If you'll remember, if you sat on the board several years ago, we've done this before. And it is a good income source to help support our students with special needs. And so I'm excited about it. Before, it was so tedious. And Carrie, you were a speech pathologist in the district when we were doing billing before. And so many complaints about how tedious it was to make sure the paperwork was right. It was just crazy. And so many districts across the state stopped billing. And so I'm excited about the possibilities with creating a little bit more income for our students. And then, of course, item number 23 is the school calendar that we talked about previously. And then 24, and then I really am passing the mic on, is computing quotes by the Director of Technology. So I'll let Tina, if you don't mind.
So I just wanted to give you a little bit of clarification because one of these quotes we have to act on. The other one is more just so you know, because I will be bringing that to you in the future. So our core data center, the hardware and software in it is out of end of life and now out of service. I was able to find a company that was willing to basically give us an insurance policy so that if that goes down, I have some kind of resource to get that data center back up and running. And just if you're not a techie minded individual, if that data center goes down, our entire network infrastructure goes down with it. One of the things that I've worked really hard to do since I was hired is go through and streamline the contracts in my department, get rid of contracts we didn't need to be paying, all those kind of things. And this came to light last year. I knew it was coming and it was on the horizon. So that first quote is the hardware and the software, along with installation assistance, to completely overhaul that data center and all of the parts therein. Data center average life for hardware and software is anywhere from 4 to 6 years. So unfortunately, it's not something that we can kind of do a set it and forget it and not have to worry about it for a very long time because things just change too frequently. The second quote, quite frankly, with everything that hit my budget for distance learning that I was not anticipating, I don't have the funds for this second quote right at this moment. But the second quote is a disaster recovery module that can be added later. I did confirm that with the company we ended up choosing. And this has been a year's worth of research, by the way. And I'm going to do a huge shout out to my assistant director, Bob Jackson, because this has been his baby and he's done a fantastic job with gathering all that information. But that disaster recovery module is something I want to add in the future once we cross into a new fiscal year and I'm not sweating making it to the end of the year quite as bad as I am right now, which basically would allow us to make sure that in the event of a ransomware, a DDoS, any kind of cyber-based attack on the student information or district data, we would have a recovery plan in place to lose 15 minutes or less of our district data and to make sure that we don't end up like some of our large neighbors over in that area of Tulsa that had to pay the ransom to get their student data unlocked. I love when we can compete with the big dogs. That's not an area I want to be next to them in the news for. I'm good on that. Right now, we do have a backup system in place that we implemented over the course of last year. So our system is fully replicable with only losing about half an hour's worth of information. So we're making strides toward that, but this would be a full disaster recovery to fully protect us against any kind of cyber attack that is becoming more and more common with public schools, because the hackers have all realized that if you lock up our students' data, we don't have large amounts of options but to pay those ransoms or pay. I will not give you the number because that would probably be unethical, but some of our big neighbors paid a whole lot of money to private consulting firms to try to get their data out, and they ended up having to pay the ransom anyway, and I don't want that to happen to us. So that second quote, I just wanted you to know that's coming in the future. We're okay right now. I feel comfortable with where we're at. We have procedures in place. So it doesn't have to happen right this second, but it will be happening in the near future.
So what I hear you saying is consent agenda approval for all items with the exception of letter B on item number 24.
Yes.
But Tina, you do have this money in an upcoming budget.
I put together a really extensive 5-year projected budget last year just to try to get the IT. We had a little bit of Wild West IT left over that I was trying to get rid of. And then all of this happened, and I feel like someone took some C4 and tossed it in the middle of my budget, because between webcams and additional Chromebooks and Chromebook licensing, my budget got hit really hard, and I wasn't anticipating it. So because of that and making sure that our students had everything they needed, I don't have what I need to do all of this, so I'm doing what we have no choice but to do now. And then I've got the pieces in place to, once we get a little further down the road into a new fiscal year, we can add those things in.
Tina, have we done business with this company before, kind of XCM, how do you say it?
So Scale Computing is the company that we're going with, and we have not done business with them before directly, but they are a highly utilized business by public schools in Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Missouri, and Georgia. I don't know why that little outlier's over there. And one of the draws and part of why we're choosing them is right now in our data center, we have a NetApp array, which is what I would call the Cadillac of data center hardware. It's very expensive. It's really expensive to maintain, and very few people are qualified to work on it. And it's quite frankly, it's got more oomph than we really need. So in the past, we've paid a lot of money for a lot more than what we needed for something that was hard to manage. This is it's not NetApp, it is a different brand, but it is more suited to our needs and what we need to function from day to day. It's also a little more cost effective. And one of the reasons why Bob and I ended up landing on this one is that with this hardware, I can replace pieces as they go out, and I won't have to replace the whole thing at one time. So in terms of long-term sustainability with unpredictable fiscal years from one year to the next, this is what we felt the most comfortable with for making sure we can sustain it no matter what the economy does, because I won't have to replace it all at one time.
Where's this hardware housed?
It is in the data core in the old 9th grade center. It's in the basement dungeon area.
The dirt floor?
No, it's not in the dirt floor, but it's a couple doors down. And what we're looking at essentially is a hybrid traditional spinny disk and flash array that will allow us a whole lot more storage, a whole lot more security. It's less hackable in the long term. And with as much as we're moving to cloud-based storage anyway, physical storage isn't as important, which is why we decided to do a hybrid. So we have the traditional spinny disk, but we also have a virtualized flash array in this as well.
Superintendent Durkee, I'm very comfortable with what Ms. Moses has presented, but I think I would be more comfortable if we could go ahead and do that second thing today as well. If we got that extra $51,000 to pay for that, I would be very comfortable with approving that.
I'm good with that.
Finding the money to do that now.
I'm good with that.
That would make me exceptionally happy. I just know that I don't have it in my budget.
Also, on the consent agenda, just go to, I always like to do this occasionally, item 16A and 18A specifically about workman's comp. And I just think it's always remarkable that when we have so many employees in our district that we don't have claims. I just think that's good, man practices by our employees and leadership to make sure that we're not putting people in situations to be hurt and those things. So I just always like to draw attention to that when we have that opportunity. And then, question real quickly on another item 17, just because I see that energy, and we had tabled an item last month, and it's related, so where are we?
So I tabled it because I realized that this board needs to have to think about it. I will say, if you would query our team, I know Mr. Morris, Mr. Lyon is gone now, spent a lot of time along with Sean Parker, really reviewing a synergistic contract, so I appreciate the question. You might see it again, quite frankly, because I know it's an expenditure, I get that, but what it would allow us to do is hire an employee to handle some of those things that Mr. Stevenson didn't. I also know that consideration by the board is something that is helpful if you have time to work through it. One of the good components of that contract specifically was the payback. So if we didn't see the cost savings and it ended up costing our district money, they wrote us a check back. So there wasn't really a way to lose, to, I think, Mr. Novel's point last month in terms of we should be responsible in turning the air down and turning the lights off. Agree, 100%. But I do know that was a function that Mr. Stevenson was serving in our district that helped us remember those kinds of things. And I think Mr. Bynum would tell you that a large area such as this, can happen where people leave the air conditioner running or leave the heat too high, and you leave it. He said your expenditures or your savings aren't going to be in electric, they're going to be in your HVAC. So that's something I would revisit. I got a call from a colleague saying it's really a smart idea, and I know there's some, people that maybe disagree one way or the other, but we didn't put it back on the board agenda this month. Is that something?
So still tabled as well?
Yeah, it's still tabled, which is why the minutes reflect I vote on tabling that item. So any other questions about that specific contract?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other vote, please?
Ben?
Just one thing real quick, Mr. Chairman, I would welcome you bringing that contract back to us in the future.
Okay, sure. And I know Mr. Blue that was representing that company would be more than happy to make another appearance. We did our lease, I will say we did our research. I know Mr. Morris just in town on the phone with Fire, with Broken Arrow. And there was another school district that we had.
Well, I've gotten queries from Enid and a couple of other places because they're visiting them, and the CFOs are talking, and several of them that are doing it right now have given favorable results over ours.
Was there some question that Councilor Watts was looking at with that contract or something?
I think that Gary's component, and he had looked at the contract. Gary's component, and he had actually reviewed the contract before. It had been a couple of months because we had met a couple of times with this company. His part of that was to make sure that actual wording of the contract was succinct. So, for instance, making sure we were entering into an agreement that was multi-year, for instance, which is illegal in the state of Oklahoma. So his perspective wasn't about, is it a good deal or not? It was really about, is the contract legal in terms of what's required in the state of Oklahoma?
Has he done, finished that? Because that was one of the other reasons we tabled it, I think, because that was not completed.
He's cleared, he had cleared it prior to the last meeting. I know Mr. Morris wanted him to take another peek at it, which is always good. But that was really about the legality of the language of the contract is where he was at. Vote.
Ben?
Aye.
Mullen?
Aye.
Novel?
Aye.
Wagner? Aye. Wager?
Aye. Okay, action items, we have one, number 25, proposed approval of the district's second revised budget for the 2021 school year. I'm going to defer questions, Mr. Morris, if you have any ideas and notes, then you want to.
Yeah, I'll be happy. You told me I had till 8 o'clock, you gave me one minute. All right, awesome. All right, Hey, if I don't start off with a joke, you know, it's numbers, people fall asleep on me. As all of you are aware, the second revised budget is not necessary by law under the State Budgeting Act. We do this as a way to true up and just kind of give you a little bit better picture. Mr. Bowles asked over the break, he asked one pertinent question, that I liked was, are we gonna have to do this again whenever the federal money arrives? Yes, we will. The reason why it's not included in this December budget is because I didn't know when it's coming in or where it's gonna go out. I have no idea. I'm guessing Fund 11, and I'm 95% sure of that, but you know, sometimes you just never know. So I never know what State Farm's gonna do, so.
Penalty advance management system as part of the formula for Title I, so I feel like that's how it's going to be. I mean, we don't know yet, but I feel like that's how it's gonna be. And it'll be assigned a project number independently of
all of the projects that we already have, and so we're in a holding place right now in terms of putting it inside a budget.
So we will probably be coming back with you with another revision, but just on Fund 11 at a later date, just so you are aware of that. If you turn to page 4, I'll go through this quickly since my time is sparse. There's really not a lot going on here. There's not a lot of changes happening within most of the funds. Fund 11 did have some changes, which I want you to be aware of. The big one being on page 4, which is the general fund revenues. If you go down to the state source of revenue, line 3210, which is about 6 lines down in the state source of revenue, you'll see we went from 18.2 to 18.9 actuals over 18, 19, 19, 20, down to 17.1 approximately on my first revise. Now we're down to 16.45. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what's happening within the state as far as the state aid is going on within the school system. That's another reduction of an additional $640,000 that they have given.
Based on our reduced enrollment?
No,
Not really?
no, this is just drop in funding. Has nothing, got very little to do with enrollment drop. Right?
So I would add some comment to that. Yes, a smidgen, but the truth is Oklahoma is seeing about 40,000 more students overall. So when you think about how many more are calculated into the state aid formula, I suspect it has to do with people partaking in virtual school in the whole state. So it's a combination of a couple of things. So yes, our enrollment's down, but not
No.
$1.5 million. So when you take that pot of money and you split it more ways, then obviously your state aid is going to go down. And so early on in the semester, last semester, we knew the projections from OSSBA and from COSA were going to be about $80 per weighted ADM. So when you think about our weighted ADM being just under 8,000, you get a calculation for exactly what kind of state aid cut you're going to take mid-year. So partially, some it's down. I will say in comparison to other districts, we're down about 140 students. There are some districts that are down 700. So every district in the state is feeling that tug of sharing state aid. Again, we're in a place where we've done some really great fiscal management. Proud of where we're at, but we're all school districts across the state are feeling that yank of state aid reallocation.
But you'll see on the bottom of Fund 11, we're down about, I've taken it down about 580,000 in total. Again, how do I say this? I am so guessing in the state of Oklahoma right now, along with all the other CFOs, as to what to expect and what's going to happen with tax collections, with disbursements, with various things that are going on. So I feel it's a good guess, but it is a guess. I'm just gonna be honest on the revenue side. We really just don't know. We'll have a better picture, especially after January's tax rolls are paid and we start receiving Tulsa County taxes, and we'll have a better idea of where our true numbers are gonna roll. But as far as state aid goes, that's a true number right there. That's where they're at now. So just so you know. On the next page on Fund 11, the expenditure side. Whenever I presented the first revised budget, it did not have the December stipend that you got, the board approved. We did not know whether we were going to do it at that point in time. We were watching funds, we were watching what was going on within the state, we didn't know how bad we were gonna get. So I've included that number in here to up my expenditure some. Mr. Mullins did ask, does that mean we're really gonna take this large a hit to our fund balance at the end of the year? No, because we're going to manage to that number like we do every time. But what I've done is given us the ability to spend if we so desire. If the revenues come back, if the revenues come up, then this gives us the ability to go spend it. Otherwise, no, we won't spend it. Our goal, I believe, is to be somewhere between around $500,000, I believe, is the number, to 750, 800,000 out of the fund balance by the end of the year at the most. I think that's kind of a good number for us to be sure, especially since we're starting to, we've taken the fund balance up as high as we have. And we have very, very much, padded our fund balance to the point that it is a healthy fund balance, so we don't have to worry about it. Any questions so far?
And that fund balance referred to as item 6,000.
I'm sorry,
It's item 6,000 is the fund balance you're referring to?
the fund balance I'm referring to is the 6.8 million, 6.9 million fund balance for the.
But it's fund number 6,000.
Yeah, oh, fund six, yeah, it would be fund 6,000, yeah. Back on the revenue card, yeah. It's like 6.8 million. But here's something you don't know, is that I had $540,000 in encumbrances because of COVID stuff going on last year that I just released and are carrying forward into the 6,000. So I'm gonna be bringing that forward as well. And it's not showing up. And that was one of the things that the auditor said was they don't like to see that, but they understood that it's happened throughout all the districts this year. They don't like to see a bunch held back in advance in encumbrances from the prior year, because it does decrease your fund balance to what you really feel like a more true number is. We were about 500,000 under on our fund balance of what we even carried forward in the prior year, but that was due to COVID. So our 6.8 really is above 7, if all truth would be told, okay? So we're doing very well as a school district, thanks to district management, and me saying no to everything. That's how I keep people. The only word I know is no. So we're doing very well. So, but just know that is there, and that is a great safety net that we have built in at this point in time.
When you get a major disruption in a school year like we had in March, then lots of things change in terms of what you spend, how you accommodate for the number of extra Chromebooks that we had to purchase. So a lot of things happen that takes the most well-designed plan and can shake it up. And so I think we've done a really great job trying to manage that. We are still uncovering surprises over the course of time. I am hoping and praying that by the time school starts in 21-22, we can be back to some sort of semblance of continuity, for lack of a better word. So it's been this way for a while, and it started March, whatever, I think that was 19th. Last year, I can remember it should be enrolled in my brain.
I keep saying since we took over that I have not had a normal year. And in 4 or 5 years, I don't think we've had a normal year yet. There's always been some kind of crazy thing going on. I don't know what's waiting for us in 21-22, and I'm not sure I want to know, so.
Rick, I would assume that $500,000 of COVID expenses you refer to.
Well, it was encumbered for COVID-related issues that we didn't end up having to spend because we got COVID money from the federal government or whatever.
So we've already got that taken care of.
Yeah.
That's not coming out of 3.1 that was
No,
not paid.
so
No, so it's just gonna get released and come forward. And so it's, so it's, I don't want to say found money, but hey. we'll
So,
take it.
Mr. Mullins, that money was encumbered in March of last year, but wasn't spent.
Yeah.
And those purchase orders, encumbrances were left open as of July 1. So
Right.
once we had some semblance of understanding where we were at with our fiscal standpoint, then Greg was able to unencumber funds that had been committed. So you saw an infusion of an extra $500,000 inside Fund 11, which was helpful. And a key reason why we felt confident in approving stipends for the teachers in December. So that unfolds after audits are done and after we've already done purchase orders for the beginning of the new year. And September happened and then our system will actually accrue all of the, salaries for the year, which, as you know, is your biggest expense. We pay people, that's what we do. And so that takes 89% of our budget. And so until you know those things, you don't get super confident about spending a lot of money up front. You make sure you have the ability to do that.
And as I continue to do every month, from this Thursday, I put together a pro forma statement of where we're at from a financial standpoint, revenues, expenses, so that we can see where we're actually at and where we're planning to go as the year goes on. And so we manage to that. And she waits with bated breath for me to put that out every month, and sometimes she comes down and meets on me a little early in the month and asks for it, because she just wants to see what's going on and everything. And so it's something that we do between the two of us so that she can manage the district and keep it healthy. And it's worked well for me. I assume she enjoys seeing it every time, so I think it works well for Ms. Murphy.
I mean, budgets are budgets. Budgets are, as Ms. what you think you're gonna spend, and what's really, for me, helpful, I want to see actuals. And so he brings us every month, which is really helpful to get a good feel for where we're at.
I like doing the revised budget as well, and I'll make a motion that we approve item 25.
I'll say that, I was gonna say one thing, we can get in trouble for a lot of things, if the board's responsible for a lot of things, we're responsible for the physical, well-being of this district, and I appreciate what you do in putting the budget together and keeping the finances in order and keeping our fund balance up and keeping us informed of all those details that are in there. Sometimes we wanna get into the minutia of all those particular items, and it's good that we can do that every once in a while, and you've always got the answers for us, so we appreciate that.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, I have a motion and a second. A vote, please.
Ken?
Aye.
Mullin?
Aye.
Stover?
Aye.
Wagner? Aye. Blake?
Aye. Okay, review business for January 21. 26, any matter not known about or which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the posting of this meeting. 27, announcements.
No announcements, other than I just simply ask
For you to take apart the fiscal calendar, because that will be something we'll want to approve by March. So make sure you're reviewing that.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second, vote please.
Ken?
Aye.
Mullin?
Aye.
Hubble?
Aye.
Wagner? Aye. Blake?
Aye. Thank you.
That we not had a meeting with the